off. I don't even know why the fuck that just happened, which is actually insane. But whatever, fuck it.
I think we're recording now.
Yeah, we are. I kicked off though. It was on at the beginning and then it kicked off.
So we got to start all the way from the beginning.
We can do whatever the fuck we want. There's no rules to this shit, man.
Okay.
We could. Listen, I'm just here to kind of shoot the shit, and I like your story a lot. So, I mean, if you want to reintroduce yourself, great. I feel like it would be a good thing. The problem is you gave such a good explanation of who you are and what you did. Maybe if you want to do it again, great.
Yeah, I'll just do it again in a short version. Well, I'm saying my name is Armin. I used to run a company called hightocgetcoaching.com. We have 400 clients come through that. We did pretty well for a couple in those few years we did the business. We won some awards, and we were really good at just helping businesses grow. Sell their products and programs online. And I feel like at that time I was like a master of self-actualization, which was, I was a deep student of Think and Grow Rich, one of the number one success philosophies in the world. I worked with the Think and Grow Rich president. We were very much partnered with the Institute. He was in our program. We were always teaching and selling his programs. And so that was the process of self-actualization, which is what I used to do. And that's the process of becoming something or someone. You have an idea. I have this goal or vision. And I mastered it. In a lot of ways, I achieved everything I set my mind to. I made the millions I wanted. I broke the records. I did those things. And if you told me back then that I would look like this, speak like this, and be doing what I do, I would laugh, because I do the exact opposite now, in a sense. Not that I don't help people achieve things, but I just redefined what achievement and success is with the people I work with. And the process I work with them on now is called self-realization, which is the process of unbecoming. Instead of trying to be someone, you remove all that's not you to return to your true self, your true nature of who you really always were. So, I think it's a funny, thing that life redirected me into being the thing I felt like back then I would make fun of. And so I'm not trying to give off a guru-esque energy. I understand how it looks and how I sound. I understand. But it's really just, I've been devoted my life in the last 2 to 3 years, after closing all of those businesses down, to truth, and to the seeking of truth, and to the questioning of myself and my life, and what I think is true. And that's a very long, strenuous process of self-study and self-introspection, and a lot of stillness, and a lot of selfless action. And so that's kind of the work I do now with the private clients I have, is we go in deep into their energy centers, their karma, their samskaras, the things that tether them to their past, that that are compulsively living through them and telling them who they are, but it's like not who they are. So that's kind of the work I do now, which is funny. And you asked the question of how did you, at what point did you know that this is not it? The businesses, the money, the living in the cool town, the city, and the women, or, for women, it might be the men, who knows, just same kind of thing, different flavor, the cars, all that stuff. My answer to that would be that I feel like we all always know. I think I want to stop feeding the narrative that society is pretending to believe and pushing on each other and themselves, that we really didn't know. Like, we don't know truth. I think we all know truth. We just don't like it. And if I look at my own journey, there was a time in the beginning when it was genuine and sincere what I was doing. Building business was an exciting idea to prove what I am capable of with the mind, and to, be an example for my family, my friends, for people, because it inspired me. It was a very inspiring motive. I was like, I want to show that an immigrant kid, I was born Canadian, so I'm not an immigrant, but I will say, a kid born in an immigrant family that, went to Canada, growing up around a lot of difficulty and financial struggle and a lot of poverty and not great influences, not good at school. This kid can grow up to be something. And it was an inspiring endeavor for me to be an example of, I could be the first millionaire in my family, just to prove it's possible. Like, we don't have to all live in difficulty. Like, we can make money if we need to, if that's the problem. We can build a business if we need to, if that's the problem. We can find the communication tools to fix the relationships if that's the problem. I just wanted to solve all the problems I knew were what I grew up around, to prove we can. At some point, though, you get really good at stuff, and the success you have becomes the trap. And there's one of my favorite books from Napoleon Hill was Outwitting the Devil. And it's because I feel like Think and Grow Rich was the principles of success, whereas Outwitting the Devil are the principles of failure. And for some reason, I feel like for me, and I don't know if a lot of people relate to this, for me, it was a lot more powerful to know what are the principles of failure that the devil is trying to use to hijack my mind and life. And that made me far more on guard and aware than trying to push myself to do the principles of success. So it gave me this like superior advantage every time a thought would come in my mind. or an energetic force would try to come in and move into my life when I was successful, I would be on guard. Like I would already know like the enemy's trick. You know, I'm like, no, you're not going to get me. And so I became extremely self-controlled, extremely impulse controlled. I'm extremely aware and conscious of every action, every moment I was intact in my mind. But at some point, you know, you make the money, you fly to Miami or LA or whatever you know, as a kid, you think I made it. You know, you get the hot girlfriend, you get the award, you get all the praise and reputation, you get all this expectation now of you to lead, and people look to you, and it's this embarrassing amount of responsibility. And your ego comes in and it starts to really identify with it. This is who I am. I've made it, all this stuff. But what happens simultaneously, some part of you feels imposter and feels like something's off. Like, is this really me? And that's an internal conversation I feel like all of us are always having. Like, is this really me?
Isn't that normal to feel like that in any situation? Like, I think at any level of success, everybody kind of feels like that. You know, like, I'm sure the top actors feel like that, like Elon Musk, all the guys. Like, I'm sure, I think that that's something that never goes away because you always remember who you were, and you were never at the top at a certain point. So you feel like that's who you were.
Well, I haven't lived forever, so I can't comment on if it never goes away. All I know is so far for now, it has gone away. And if it ever tries to come back with me, it's like it's a very different relationship I have with that voice. And the second thing I would say to that is I'd be very careful with the word normal. I think the word normal is a cover-up blanket for many things that are just not normal, but we've normalized. And I think that's a very dangerous thing to do in your mind because it's an easy way out from consciously facing life and reality and truth. And so I wouldn't call it normal, although is it common? Yes, common and normal are not the same thing. Normal is a standard you're saying that it happens to everyone. Normal would be interchangeable with nature. You know, it's natural. You know, that's why people use it interchangeably. That is a very dangerous way to use the word normal in nature because that's not true. It's not our nature, for example, to have imposter syndrome. That's a mental experience. That's not our nature. It's not our nature to feel an internal conflict with our life. That's not it might be normal based on the commonality of it, like everyone has it. But if everyone also had, obesity, it wouldn't be normal to be obese. It wouldn't be normal to have cancer. But those things are cause and effects. We do things to ourselves to get to that point. So I wouldn't normalize it. I would say when I got to that point, I was putting so much emphasis and effort and time into proving I am this guy that everyone's looking at me to be and that everyone's reinforcing I am, that it left no room inside of me to genuinely ever question who am I. And that's a dangerous place to be in. Because if you can't have the freedom to question who am I, how do you ever know you are really being who you are? Because there's no room. It's like being in a relationship where you're afraid of questioning your partner. So you never really have any conversation deeply because they'll threaten to kill you or beat you, whatever. In that relationship, how do you ever have space for truth? Because if you can't conversate, you can't question things, then you just have to submit to being going along with it. So we do this to ourselves inwardly with the ego, you know, and so that it felt like a trap, you know. But go ahead, you had a question.
When you were at the height of your business then and you asked yourself, like, who am I? Who were you in that moment? And then I guess if you ask yourself now, who am I? What comes to mind?
I was too afraid to back then because I was too afraid to question. That was the sign I needed to know. Maybe my success is my prison, not my life, not my lifestyle, my reward. Maybe it's a trap because why am I afraid to step back from who I am expected to be every day for myself and others? That wasn't a good feeling, bro. It felt very unnatural because I thought, well, I know we're all kind of like pretending we're this, you know, because we make ourselves believe. That's what self-actualization is. You literally sit there and visualize the thing that's not real until it feels real. So you can't sit here and tell me that stuff's real. Like, you have to at least admit, if you're going to do this, we're making it up until it feels real. But even then, what defines it being real? That it feels real. Now, if I take your feeling away, now is it real? So what if you look like a very successful guy, but inwardly you don't feel successful? Which one's real? Are you not successful? Or are you successful? There's no room, bro, for real contemplation, questioning, discernment. When you are too identified with your mind, it kind of tells you you're not allowed to. And that's kind of the trap of success. I had a call with a client of mine, and it was a very powerful call because I was talking to her about how success is really the trap, not failure. Failure is easy to get moved from because you don't like it. But success, you like it. And so all your likes make you very much attached to it, and it owns you. So you don't own your success, it owns you. In that case scenario, if I asked who am I, it would terrify me because I was too afraid and some part of me knew that I suppressed a lot, that I'm too busy like becoming this person I still need to become, that I still haven't really become. And everyone's looking at me like, you become it, bro. Like, you're successful, you're this. And I'm like, no, it's not enough. I got to get to this much millions and I have to do this. So that's the second fine print of that contract with the ego, is that no matter how much you do, you're going to still need to do more and you'll never feel complete. And so people call that ambition. I don't call that ambition. I call that fear and scarcity. I call that insecurity and inferiority. Real ambition is a very powerful emotion. I don't think most of us even have it really, because we're all running from something. We're not being driven by something inspiring us. So I wouldn't call myself ambitious. I would call myself afraid if I look back at it now and I had me as a client. But back then I would call it power. Right? Back then I would call it power. Yeah, bro, I'm ambitious. I have big dreams. I'm just not disciplined enough. I need to do these things more. We need to get to 40 employees instead of 20. Like, I called that. I was proud of that, but I was ignorant. I really was. And I'm not knocking on that guy. I'm just seeing it for what it is. And I'm compassionate. Is I didn't know. I thought I was really the best at the time. And the business wasn't, the evil I'm putting down. I don't think business or money is the problem. I'm still in business today. Money still comes in, but my ego is who I'm directly calling out because I allowed him to take over the show.
But don't you think that you have to have that success to move on to the next part? Like, everything you're saying sounds great and stuff, but like, don't you almost need to go see that that's not it to go back? Like, how can you know something is not it unless you experience it, right? Because I think if you never had the success you've had, and like, to be fair, I do want to get into that as well, but I don't think if you had the success you had, you can move on to this, because the carrot in front of you is what keeps you going. And then you just caught it. And then you realize like, this sucks. But like, if you don't do that, can you get to the other side of it where you are?
You have great questions, bro. And I suspect the questions come from a deeper place of truth of your own questions. I feel like sometimes I feel like interview questions are like good questions they thought of. This is first time I'm feeling the questions are the questions you're deeply asking. So I want to honor you. I want to thank you for bringing me into your world. Because the questions,
to be fair, I come into these with zero prep, zero anything. I write down the person's name so I don't fuck that up, and then that's it.
You're doing great, bro. Like, this is a real conversation, and I think it's because you're being real. So thank you. So my answer would be, I don't know. And it's easy to say you need that. Again, I'm very cautious of conclusions. Many conclusions are illusions. And I'm like hyper aware of illusions. That's kind of what self-realization does to you. You start to just see how many times and how many different elaborate ways your mind, your ego, really deceives you into believing something that isn't true. Do you need to get it all or get the things you want to know that either it doesn't matter or like, it's not what you want? Maybe. But that would mean that no person can reach any sort of enlightenment or truth or peace in their life until they've kind of earned it through success. And that's not true. I think we both know that, because I take you to a different part of the world where it's not run off capitalism or entrepreneurialism. And there's many people who are deep in spiritual truth, many people deep in peace, deep in alignment with nature, and they've never built a business. I don't think it's required. Do I think it makes it more powerful? It gives you an edge? Sure. Because if you talk to me, right, I'm not a kid who grew up in a mountain or in a trailer, like living in a van. Like that's like a stereotype, a stigma. Like, a lot of people that look like this will probably have never done anything with their life. So it's easy to just shun them as like, oh, you're just lazy. I've had a person tell me that. I'm like, you're a coach. Oh, that means you do nothing. And I'm like, oh, interesting. It shows me what you think about yourself. But I look at that and I go, okay, well, there's an easier stereotype. They haven't done anything, so they don't understand. So that whatever they say can't be true. But you can't tell that to me, because I dedicated 10 years of my life from 17 to 27 years old on the chase of success, and I fucking conquered it. I conquered it in my own standards and my own goals. And so I look at that and I go, I already know the things you're eating, like the food, like the temptations and stuff you're tasting that you love. So does it give me an edge? Sure. And I think if I had to choose, if I had a son, for example, and we had to choose, he goes through success, but then finds spiritual truth versus spiritual truth first, I probably would still teach him how to develop something, build skills, like actualize himself into someone and have success, because it's a powerful journey, bro. It helps you understand the power of will and the power of your mind. And if you don't have that awareness of the power, maybe it's harder to use that same power and will, instead of material success, achieving inner success, which is sitting down and finding peace and stillness. But do I think it's not possible without it? No, I don't think that. And the people we learn from and that I study and I learn from, and like, they are not from a background of business.
I do want to ask you something though, because you said if you had a son, you'd want him to go the business route first, but it's not impossible to go the route you are first. But if you believe in it so much, why would you even want him to go that route? Why even waste all that time if he's just going to circle back around to where you want to be?
Not business route. I said like success route, to learn the process of his own mind. I would, because it takes a lot of will to surrender. That's a paradox. It requires lots of willpower. The same entrepreneurial determination I had to go through every challenge to build my business is the same determination I needed to sit still and resist the impulse of my mind to make me move. It's the same power, bro. So without that power, I'm going to have to build it somehow. If I'm going to build it through service to others, through business and goals, or if I'm going to build it through yogic practice, either way, I got to build willpower in me. I have to develop concentration. My point to my thing that I realized in my journey is entrepreneurs have an advantage over the average Joe, because they had to develop a strong sense of determination to be successful. So if they use that same word, but change their priorities from making money and getting people's validation to finding peace and being in truth, they would actually be far better yogis than most people that never had that experience. There's an advantage. But if I wanted to teach my son, like, hey, here's the mastering this realm, the realm of achievement. You set your mind to something, look how easy it is. If he knows that, I go, great. Now let me ask you. The question is not, and this is a question for you and for everyone watching. The question is not, can I get what I want? That's the first, like, I feel like, at least for men, at least growing up, achievement is our value and whatever. At least the first question is, can I get what I want? Like, you have to prove you can, which is such a rudimentary experience. It's so basic. Of course I can get what I want. I just got to put my mind to it, act, like challenges come up, sure. But most people are stuck, but even behind that, they're like, I don't even know. I'm a victim. Okay. Well, if I get there, now the question is not what do I want, is how do I know what I want is meant for me? That's the self-realization journey. So it doesn't matter if you can achieve anything you set your mind to anymore. Now, how do you even know if the thing you're setting your mind to is the thing that's meant for you, is right, is actually what you want at the deepest part of you, or if it's just some illusion that you think will fill the void that you're trying to fill? And so that's why the process would be that way.
What is the answer to that question, though?
Which one?
The question of, how do I know if this is what I actually want, opposed to, is it actually what I want? Like, how do you know? I think there's a lot of things in my life I want right now because I want them, but how do I know that that's really what I want?
That's a very fair question. Actually, I just had a call yesterday with a friend of mine who deals with this, and he's like, "Why, bro? I'm pretty sure I want to be on a yacht." And I'm like, "I don't think that's what you really want." And he goes, "It feels really good to be on a yacht. Like, I definitely want to make enough money to be on it." And I'm like, "Okay, well," I asked him, I said, "What's your goal? Is your goal to feel good or to feel God? Because they're not the same thing. Not always. Not all feeling good is feeling God, but all feeling good is feeling God. All feeling God is feeling good. What does this mean? Well, how many times in your life have you got something that you knew would feel good and maybe did even feel good, but then it faded? What a waste of time. What a waste of time. If you're a business owner, would you spend months or years of your life developing a product that had a shelf life of 15 minutes? No. So like, we have intelligence. We just separate and don't use it on the inner world wisdom. It's like, okay.
I do want to push back on that a little bit though, because what you're doing is you're putting in work now to reap the benefits later. So it's not like you're just going to have a business and perpetually be in a shit state. You're going to work to enjoy the fruits of your labor later on.
My pushback to that, your pushback, is that those fruits don't last. And that's the truth we all see. And if you find me someone who goes, nah, bro, the Ferrari I got or the $1 million in my bank has brought peace and love into my spirit and my life, it's like, I'm enlightened now, I'm good. Then I'll be like, great, let me have a conversation with them. Not to prove him wrong, to study him. Because I haven't met someone like that. I haven't been that way, making millions myself. I just saw everyone else knows what I see. The difference was I had courage to surrender it to see what else there is. Everyone else was very stuck and attached to, I can't let this go. Because what else is there? What am I going to be? So I'm like, okay, no problem. Let me go do it and see if I could like find out and then share it with you. And for the people that are ready to hear that, because they didn't have the opportunity to be able to walk that surrender experiment path, they get to borrow the wisdom and say, hey, I didn't know. And that's why I feel like I'm doing what I'm doing today. I didn't choose to do this. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's even with kind of like self-identity and stuff. I have a friend who's an investment banker, and he ended up like losing his job due to like cuts and all this kind of stuff. And like, he was just like devastated because that's who he was. And then you strip that away from him. Now he's like, I don't know who I am without that. And it's kind of interesting where people do put all that pressure on themselves of like who they are. And that's something that we talked about before too, where I feel fortunate, where I'm like, I feel like you could actually rip anything away from me except for the gym. I feel like if you took the gym away from me, I'd be like, fuck. But anything else, I feel like it's fine. You know, if you're like, hey, you could never do this again, you can't ever do this again, you're not this, I'm like, okay, no worries. But it is interesting how many people wrap up who they are with like what they do.
But you're also a very adaptable person from your journey of what you shared with me. So the thing to be looking at and questioning is, am I truly free of all things, or am I in the habit of adapting all the time? And that's a big difference. If you're truly free of all things, they take anything from you and you're experiencing an inner peace that no one can take from you. Like, you're complete and whole. There's nothing that can touch you. If you're a very adaptable person, you just are in a good feeling habit of, if anything's taken, you are excited to start all over again and do something new. And I was a chameleon, so I understand that feeling. I would actually feel excited about changing schools because I go, oh, new playground to play. That didn't mean I was untethered.
Yeah, I'm definitely the adaptive, because one of my favorite quotes of all time is by Charles Darwin, where it's like, you know, the smartest isn't the one that'll survive. It's not the strongest, but it's the one who's willing to adapt the most. And like, I'm always like, that's fucking as true as
I relate to you.
Yeah.
And it's important to discern that that isn't actual freedom. It's just your personality. It's the habit you're good at. And so if you removed adaptability, for example, if I put you in one place for 100 years, you would suffer. See, so now the prison's on the other side. You just think you're free because everyone else can't change, but you can. But if I didn't let you change, you would die inside. So anything that can take you, bro, this is not freedom. We got to work on that for liberation. So for example, that means commitment to one person for a long time, or being stuck in a life that you may not be able to change a lot, is going to really threaten that adaptability that you are in the habit of wanting to always be doing. And so there should be nothing you're afraid of. There should be a stillness in you that embraces whatever comes. This is living in surrender. That takes skill, bro. It takes time and effort. It's like a muscle. I wish I could say it was as easy as like, it's just who you are. But I've noticed in my journey that would be kind of inaccurate. It takes development muscle, time to surrender over and over until you can surrender to bigger and bigger things. We surrender on small levels, but big things. And I noticed the smaller things, actually, it's a paradox, is harder than the bigger things. Like, you might be much easier to, this business is taken from you and you have to start a new one. It might be a lot easier to surrender, not attached to it. But it's a small thing, like your routine in the morning. It might like fuck with you. You're like, oh, no, bro, like I need it, or else I'm not having a good day. Like, I noticed that it's hiding in places we're not looking. But to answer your original question about how do you know what the answer to the question is, what do I know is meant for me and not? There is a way for that. And that's what I walked and I experienced. And that's what I want to share with people, is that surrender is the way. The practice of surrender is how you answer the question, what's actually meant for me versus what am I just having the impulse to think I want? That's how you know. And surrender is 3 different S's. It's a practice of self-study, which I did by recording every day of my life. And I just crossed 800 days of it. I'm recording like podcast stuff just for myself, reflecting on my day, pulling out insights, pulling out breakthroughs, catching patterns, observing every thought, emotion, belief, behavior, thing, that experience I have, and watching it like a hawk to see, what is this really? What's the nature of truth in this actually? Well, how much of it is illusion versus how much of it is, and you catch patterns, you start noticing a lot of this is just not true, what I'm living. It's not. Then you add in the second S, which is stillness. Stillness is the practice of resisting the mind. And every time you observe your thoughts closer, you feel further from them because you notice they're not you. So the further you get from your thoughts in your mind, the more gap you create between you and the impulse activity of the mind, which means you know how to be still and react in response to every samskar, every stimulus of life. If you don't have that ability or skill, you have no idea. You can't tell me you're living free. Because if you're reacting to everything, who's making the decision? You or your habits or your past, right? So that's a very logical proposition. The third one, self is action. I think this one's the funnest one for entrepreneurs, because whereas you developed an ego to only do things that are productive to your outcome and purpose, only produce results and gain you something, you do the complete opposite and give and serve and take from yourself to give to others instead of take from others to give to yourself. You do the complete opposite, which will shake up your ego a lot, and it'll change your values inside, your principles, from how to gain from everything you do to how to do everything with all of your heart without the gain. And that makes you a very powerful person. So those three practices are what I did in rotation.
For me, isn't this like a luxury almost? Like, isn't this a problem that only wealthy people can kind of deal with? Because it's like, great, I'm going to go find myself. I'm going to take some time for myself. That all requires money. To the person who's fucking going paycheck to paycheck, where they're like, great, I would love to find myself. Where do I find time? How do I make that? How do I get out of what I'm doing?
Is it easier with money? Yes. Is it impossible without it? No. And to also assume that you have to assume I had a lot of money when I started, and I ended the business with debt I had to pay off personally for the business that I incurred. I had a big business, and I took it on as a personal debt to pay off. Yeah. And I had not much in my bank account left. And so I had to really walk in faith. I'm like, I'm going to do this, surrender, because it's truth. And I'm going to stop having an excuse for why I can't. And so I would say I'm a living example directly disproving money is a factor in surrender. It makes it easier. But is the question, how do I do the easiest path to truth, or how do I just get to truth? If the factor of easiness or difficulty doesn't matter to you and truth is more important, your devotion to truth is greater, it doesn't matter your situation. You just start practicing the best you can. So I did the best I could. And I think it's a cop-out to avoid what you call, and you're not the only one to say this, the luxury of surrender, which is an interesting way to put it, but just to avoid the practice of surrender because you think you don't have the conditions to be able to. That's no different than the guy who says, I can't marry until I have enough money. I'm not ready to have kids until I have enough money. It's no different than the girl who goes, I want to finish my career before I find love. Like, it's the same illusion wrapped in different clothing. And so I have a hard boundary with my mind. I go, no, like, you can't come into my spiritual path and also trick me there. You fuck with me in my ego path, no problem. But in my spiritual, you're not touching it. Anything that comes up as an impulse of like, you can't do this, or it has to be like this, I'm like, nope.
How many people don't achieve the success though that want to come find like the enlightenment? Do you know what I mean? Like, it always seems like people that are really successful want to find it. Why is it not somebody who's working at, like a retail shop or like a fast food restaurant that's like, hey, fuck this, I want to go into the light? Like, why maybe it is. I don't know a ton about this space.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Well, I haven't on the eastern side of the world, from the things I've studied and the people I've met and the bit of travel I've done, they don't live that way. Like, so what your question would apply to them, because they all are born into, to some degree, some spiritual awareness. Like in Hindu culture, like the kids grow up meditating, you know what I mean? And Buddhist culture, and Himalayas and parts of China, parts of, there's a lot of culture around paying attention to your mind. Only in Western civilization are we being drained, just fucking harvested for money and attention by the government and the companies. So this is a Western disease. This is not an actual, like, how humans are. The answer to your question, I think everyone knows, because what kind of world and society do you get indoctrinated into when you're born on the Western side, in Canada, America, UK, like anyone that's Westernized? You're born into a system of, if you're a man, you need to produce to be worthy. The more women you sleep with, you're more of a man. The stronger you are, you're more of a man. You need to prove yourself. And to women, you need to look very pretty so the men like you. Like, it's a very shitty fucking culture system that we're born into and we're taught. So the answer to your question is very simple. The guy working at Subway isn't thinking about enlightenment because he's been mind fucked and conditioned to believe he is nothing until he proves he's something. And two things happen with people that grew up with that programming. One is they push through. They realize the power of their will and they fucking prove everyone wrong. which is a very unhealthy way to do it. I wouldn't choose to do it that way. My son won't. If he ever goes to success, he's going to come from a place of peace, not from a place of I need to prove something because I'm shit. That's how I started. Oh, the other thing is they get wildly depressed because they just realize or decide, I can't do this. This pressure doesn't feel right, but also it's so big because it's the whole country or society telling me to do it. I'm not going to comply to this, but I don't know what else because no one's teaching me what else I am. They're just telling me if I'm shit, if I'm not this. So I'm just going to go and get addicted to gaming, drugs, porn. And that's the epidemic we're dealing with now. That OnlyFans, 80% of them are fucking men in America, right? Because everyone just consumed being their life and soul being sucked by distractions because the society they're born into is too shit. It's not supportive of truth in them. So I think it's a disease of the westernization. I grew up in it too in Canada. And so I just like, I think if you're born, you go to Italy, go to Spain, go to India, like my friends from there, the place I've traveled, culture is very different, bro. Like the basics of like, they go for a walk every day. At least half the day they're outside walking in the sun. They're much healthier people. Minds are very much more stable. They have different values than people like us who sit inside on a computer 8 hours a day and have our whole life through a screen, right? And we don't even interact. You got to pay someone to get you to walk, you know? So it's an epidemic of the Western disease for sure.
That's the thing about Thailand too. They literally call it the country of 1,000 smiles, and you go there, some dude will be like missing his legs and like he's just in the street, ask for money, you don't give it to him, and he's literally like doesn't give a shit. And it's really interesting. And I had an ex-girlfriend that got really big into like Buddhism, and I wouldn't say hedonism, but like Buddhism, and I kind of got into it and was like meditating and doing all this shit. And we started going to like the temples when we went to Laos, and super cool stuff, man. Like it is pretty cool. For me, it was like super difficult because my mind is like constant, just like constant. Like I'm thinking about shit from when I was a kid all the way to like business to my like ROAS to like all within a span of like 2 minutes. But it was really cool. I'll never forget one time we were doing like some meditation in the morning, and we're probably like a month into it at this point, where I tried to do like half hour every day, and she would do like an hour and a half. And all this like crazy purple shit came into my vision, and like all this, and like I was explaining it to her, and she's like, that didn't happen. And I was like, well, why would I lie about that? That's so great. Like, why the fuck would I even say that? And she's like, oh, that's so crazy. And she like showed me in this book that this is like some level of, I don't know what it was, but I could feel my ego kicking because I was like, fuck yeah. Like, I don't even know what I just did, but it seemed good. But it was super cool because like, I'll never forget it. It was like the craziest dark purple stuff that was like doing all this weird stuff. And she actually pulled it up and showed it to me after. And it is cool though, because then you start to learn like, it's just your mind. Your mind is the most important thing, right? And I was talking to a friend yesterday, and I have way more money than I had 3 years ago, and I feel more broke now than I did then. Like truly, like I feel like scarce with my money. And yeah, well, dude, then I was like, "Fuck, you want to go to Thailand right now? Sure, no problem." And now I'm like, "Ooh, I don't know. Like, what's that Airbnb cost?" And I'm like, I think the problem is though is when you get a little bit of money, the fear of losing it too. Opposed to like before, I didn't really have much, so I was like, fuck it, you know.
Your mind also expands to how much is a lot and not a lot because you have more, and so you start to feel poorer the richer you become. So like, whereas in the beginning, I remember the first $30,000 month I had, I felt like I was Bill Gates. You know, like I'm like $5,000 sales. I'm like, oh my god, 30,000 is like a year's worth of Uber delivery meals. You know, like I'm I'm rich, and then you know you go into the world and you realize 30,000 is like not anything if you have a team, if this, and then. I got to a point where I'm spending, I think, 80 to 100 grand in expense a month. So I had to make just 150 to even make it worth it. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, fuck, I'm doing an average of 200 grand a month, but I feel poorer than when I made 30 grand with nothing. And so that was a shitty paradox too that I hated about the achievement world. And I think that's just based on doing it from the ego. I think when you are detached from a lot of those kind of belief systems that you didn't choose, it feels very different. Like I feel rich as fuck now when I have money come in, and I don't make as much as I made when I had my company, but I also have none of the expenses, none of the hassle, none of the anything or the ego I need to answer to. So I'm far more grateful, bro, for every dollar that comes, every $1,000 that comes in. Like I'm far more like, wow, this feels like I feel like I'm wealthy, irrespective of what I'm making. And there, it's like you're measured by your own mind, by your worthiness, by how much you're making. You know,
well, I have a business coach right now too, and he said everyone's so obsessed with the top line, like how much did you make? Oh, like 50K a month, 100K a month, 300 a month. But he's like, nobody talks about the bottom line. Like everyone just wants to see these crazy numbers. He's like, you know, He's like, I built my company to like 180K a month, and I make more than I do now, and I have like a fraction of like what I was doing before. And he's like, basically like, I do 180 and I'll walk away with like 30, and now he's like, I do like 25 and I walk away with like 23. And he's like, it's just, but everyone in this space is obsessed with that top line number. And it comes down to the ego thing, like you said as well, too, right? And I'm in group chats with like fitness coaches, and I'm probably like on the bottom rung, and that's also like something that fucks with me too, because I'm always like, looking at all these people that are like 3, 4, 5, 6x from where I'm at, and I'm like, fuck, like,
why does that fuck with you?
So one thing I learned about life is like wherever you're doing is you're going to compare yourself around you. So like I did jiu-jitsu for like 4 years, and I still do. And sometimes I'd go in there and there's a black belt, and that guy might be living paycheck to paycheck. But in that, like when we're on the mats, he's the shit. Everyone's asking him questions. Everyone wants to roll with him. But, we go for like a fancy dinner. All of a sudden it's some other guy who's like big dicking it, buying everyone shots and this and that. So one thing that I learned is like, whoever you're comparing yourself to in that moment is going to dictate how you feel. And I'm comparing myself to them in that moment.
Yeah. Why don't you just not compare yourself?
Because that's the game I'm playing in that moment.
At least you're honest.
Yeah. Like that. But I'm also okay to be in that game. Like I am comparing myself to them, and I do notice that. But I've kind of told you before, like I've traveled almost 3 years straight at different times for almost a year at each time. So like I go back and forth, man. I got like I rented a van, traveled across Canada. I lived in a van for like 4 months, and I got that version of me in me. But then I also got, do you know what it is? I have a big fear of like getting in my like 40s and 50s and not having money, and then deciding like, hey, I want to have a family. I want to do this. And all of a sudden I have no money. It's like, cool. I got to live a fucking hippie life and like do whatever I want. But I can't know what the future me is going to think. And it's a big risk to guess that I'm going to be the same way.
Be careful. If you're too afraid of it, it might happen.
Yeah. Well, why?
Don't you know how fear works?
No.
It's the strongest attention pulling energy there is.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you pay attention to it, the more of attention it pulls, the more you're concentrating on the scenario that you're afraid of, and the more you're tuning yourself into that happening and being there with you. So living fearlessly, very important to get to that place, which is what peace is. If you're totally afraid of everything happening, it will happen. It will happen. That's where your energy is.
To be fair, it's not like something I like dwell on a lot, but sometimes when I do come back to like, why do I want what I want right now? I don't know. Like, it's funny when you start talking a lot.
It's a conscious activity. We're not talking about conscious. Only 5% of your brain is conscious. 95% living in the unconscious. If that's fixed on this fear, and then you're living from there, you don't even notice it. This is what self-realization shows you, not self-actualization. Self-actualization is like, I got a bunch of shit here on my bed. Let me just cover it up with blankets. And the new blankets is what I want to look at, even though underneath it is a bunch of shit. But like, I love these new blankets. Self-realization removes the blankets and deals with what's under, and then faces it so that you don't have to live in suffering to it. So fear lives at the deepest parts of our mind. It just comes out every now and then at your conscious mind on the surface, and you distract yourself most of the time. If you catch it when it comes out, though, and you face it head on with stillness, you might be able to follow it back to its root and remove the samskara that's kind of there holding you to it. Because in your energy, you're creating it because it's still relevant to you. For example, I don't know anything about my fear of like alligators. So like, I'm never going to run into an alligator because I haven't had that experience. I don't have that fear. I don't think about it. I don't have a belief around it. But if I had grown up with one, I'll probably keep running into some things that make me feel like what an alligator makes feel like, because I had this traumatic experience when I was a kid. And I'll just keep reliving the fear of like, oh, fuck, it's not an alligator. It's just a lizard. And so what will happen is my reality is going to be controlled unconsciously from the things I don't even know are there. That's what I'm talking about. So if you're deeply afraid at a deep level that in your 40s you will be destitute and you can't have enough to support yourself, you may accidentally, unintentionally create that reality, or you'll feel that way regardless of your condition. You'll think you're just not doing enough. And so either way, fear is making you a victim of that suffering. And the only way to transcend it is through going into it, not distracting yourself from looking at it with stillness, pulling it up, building the introspective muscle, and then making choices consciously. you know?
Mhm. I don't think it's a deep fear. It's like something that pops up where I'm like, hey, this is cool to like travel and do this thing and live this life. And then all of a sudden you got like 5 grand to your name. And then, you kind of get to the age where, yeah, I don't know. Like it's there, right? Where it's like, hey,
And you're
it's a big bet where it's like, all of a sudden you're thinking right now of like, hey, I'm going to like tattoo my whole body black because it seems cool right now. And then you're like, wait, when I'm 45, am I going to love that? It's like, it's not a deep fear, but it's like what I do now is going to dictate my future. So I should, and I feel like, my family was super cool and they're like, enjoy your 20s, like kind of fuck around, try different things. So I feel like I tried a lot of different jobs and I traveled a ton. And we spoke about this before, but I definitely feel like I'm in like the building phase. And I actually had a call with my coach and I got some alignment with what I want to do. And I'm shutting down everything I'm doing right now. I'm going to rebuild. So it's
no
kind
way.
of,
That's a big step for you, man.
Yeah. Everything's off. I deleted a whole bunch of shit from my Instagram and
Wow.
revamped.
New Cole.
New Cole. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was so funny. I thought it was so funny when we were at dinner and we were talking to Zach, and then he was like, "Yeah, Armin's really helped me get aligned," and I was like, "Yeah, buy my course."
I wish I had a course on alignment. Maybe I would be able to benefit from this stereotype of it.
I kind of want to go back though to like how you got into your business. So like, what were you doing before you got into your business, and then what made you get into coaching? And like, why specifically coaching? Because most people I meet start a business, they kind of grow it, and then they realize, hey, I can coach people on this.
Yeah. Which business? The one I'm doing now or the consulting one in the past?
Very first, like when you first got into the coaching business.
Yeah, my very first one were events. There was a very specific event that inspired it. I was kind of a lost kid and hanging out with a bunch of kids who were also lost, trying to like be a big time CEO. And we all like kind of played suits. Like we paid for an office together. It was like 4 of us. And we would dress up every day like in suits. And we literally act as if like that's all we had. We were kids. We were like, under 20 years old. And we're like, well, let's at least act as if we're successful so we can see if we can attract it, manifest it. We were really deep into that shit. But we were doing some work, So we go in there, we like track every minute of our time and then have a weekly meeting looking at everyone's time, like daily efficiency reports. Like we did some crazy, like it was kind of culty. It was like, it wasn't my cult, but like I was in it, but it was like very developmental. Like I didn't go to university or college, but I feel like that was my post-secondary education because I did that for a whole year. We just show up to the house, to the office. And we'd all like have these made up schedules to like do shit that seemed like we'd be a CEO. And so we were like building brands. We were doing research. We were, we also wasted just a lot of time. That's what we realized when we were tracking things. We were just watching YouTube videos. But I really tried. And I felt lost. I felt very disconnected with myself. I didn't feel like I fit into the group. But I was really like the guy who was running it was a friend of mine at the time. And I was like, I admired him a lot. I had a deep inferiority complex. I always compared myself to everyone. And so it's because I was just inherently thought I was not good enough how I am. And so I wanted to be like someone else. And so he was like who I latched onto. And he was like this brilliant kid, he was my age, but like he was reading like Warren Buffett's biography and like he's like, I'm going to be rich. And I'm like, great, let me learn from this guy. But he was like the opposite to me, polar opposite. I led from my heart. He led from his mind. I would lead from person to person connection. He would be like, I want to use people and pay them salaries because I can own them to do whatever I want. Like we were very opposite in perspectives in the world. Yeah. He seemed very dark, but he was just very calculated. And I seemed very like vulnerable or gullible to him, but I was just very connected to my emotions. So it was interesting, but for a whole year, I felt disconnected and I was depressed, but I'm like trying so hard to prove I'm successful. And I just wanted to get out of my house. I wanted to have money to be able to do my own thing. Like it was really just, I was avoiding my home. It wasn't good at home. And then I get this email out of nowhere from Tony Robbins' team. And one thing led to another, the sales rep's name was Cynthia Savage. I called the phone. I never do anything like this, but I had this little nudge. I'm like, what a fucking name, Cynthia Savage. So she sold me a ticket for $800. And I think I had like $2,000 in my bank account. I'm like, all right, fuck it, let's do it. And I'm like, it's in San Jose. I've never gone to the States. I'm going to do this alone. I'm like, it was crazy. So I did this huge risk. I almost canceled the tickets too last minute, but I ended up going. Dude, this huge risk. I went there, sketchy place, like neighborhood. We went there and I walked into 11,000 people and I did a 4-day event. It's called UPW. And I remember there's a specific moment, like I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I just thought he's going to like give me motivation to be successful. And, I had no idea what I didn't know. And I go in there and he opens my eyes to the world of, the mind, conditioning, neurolinguistic programming, limiting beliefs, all this shit. And like I had no education around it. And it was like on day 3, we did this huge exercise called Dickens process, and he walked us through our limiting beliefs. And I have 3 core ones I noticed that I'm always like living there with, which is, one is like whenever I'm close to success, something happens and it gets ruined. Like that was one belief I always had. So I would like literally was unintentionally creating these things happening. I also thought I was smarter than every girl I meet. So obviously I had a very bad relationship to relationships. And I'm like, I just feel like I can't meet someone who like is at my level. They're always like immature or whatever. That was a reflection of my relationship to my mom. And the other one was, I think, I'm unqualified to do what I really want to do. And in my personality, like in my nature, because everyone kind of has a different soul nature when they come in, like there's something you're drawn to. I was a good teacher. I've always been a good teacher. I was giving advice to my friends when I was in school. Like I just could see things and articulate it, and I was really good at it. But I told myself I need to be wildly successful before I could teach anyone anything. So I'm in that event. And I write it down. I'm like, I'm not qualified. I'm still unqualified to be a coach, to like help others with stuff. And I wrote it down, and we faced those 3 limiting beliefs. We did the whole process, and I overcame it. And I saw him, and he was like 19 when he started. And I just got so inspired by the possibility of what he built, starting very similar to where I was, with nothing, no education or nothing, just with will, with burning desire. I remember looking around and seeing the audience and seeing him, and I just literally saw my dream life. I'm like, there's a huge audience here. Their all lives are changing. He's on stage with his wife. He's this fucking boss guy. He makes all his money. He's changing lives. I'm like, I literally just had this awakening moment. I'm like, I could do this if I want to. Like there's nothing left in me saying I can't. I just decided to. I remember walking out, and I'm like, I know, I'm very clear on what I'm going to do. I stopped all the things I was a part of with the other people. I'm like, I'm going to be a coach. And the guy looked at me. He's like, he laughs. He's like what? Like people are going to pay you to talk to you? And I said, yeah. And he goes, are you sure? Because like, there's a way better opportunity here to make money with this thing we're doing. And I'm like, I'm sure. And he's like, all right, man. Like, it's you. Do your thing. I think within 60 days, I had an event. I put together like crazy story. That one, I attracted the right people. They like one girl was a Landmark person, and she brought everyone. Like I had 50 people in a room. 40 people.
I went to Landmark when I was a kid. How crazy is that?
So imagine one of the forum leaders, like right-hand person, was somehow who I got introduced to, and I got invited to this event. It was a birthday. I went on stage. I got picked for a raffle. I went on stage. Like, what's your goal this year? I'm like, run a big 100% event. And then like 5 people gave me their cards. One of them was her. She's like, how can I help? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I got to teach, but I got to make it a curriculum. And so she helped me with that. And then I'm like, we got to sell the event. It's free, but like we got to invite. She invited people. So like it kind of miraculously happened. The moment I set my mind to it, just things started moving. And I had 48 people in a room 60 days after that event with Tony. And I was teaching 7 hours for a 1-day event. And the one guy I talked to, he's like, you should do a 1-hour thing. I'm like, nah, Tony does 4 days. I gotta catch up. So I just compared myself to him. That was for years I did that. And I did a 7-hour event, and I had one person have a breakthrough. I'm such a ballsy kid. I did an intervention live. That could have been the end of the beginning of my career. I'm like, who here wants to change like a limitation? And I had this girl stand up who was abused, like beat by her husband. Her sons are on cocaine. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is my first intervention. I'm fucking 20 years old. So I did whatever. I really pushed through it. I did what I thought, I learned to do. I read his books and I learned how to do it. And I quickly changed her state. And she goes, yeah, like I just realized like I don't have to suffer it. I'm like, everyone give her a round of applause. And I'm like, holy shit. And one guy's like, I've been sitting here for 7 hours. I back pain. I usually can't sit for this long, but with you, I've sat. So I just got all this reinforcement of like, you're meant to be doing this. And I'm like, fuck. All right.
Yeah.
And I cried that night. I remember everyone left, and I booked some $300 sessions with people. And like, I made some sales coaching, talking to them. And I was sitting there, and I had realized at that moment, there was a very sentimental moment, that for my whole life, I've been looking for like this father figure, like this mentor figure in my life. And then I just sat there and I re-visualized myself on the stage because I was in the back of that room that I booked. And I was looking at that guy on the stage that I was, and I'm like, I'm the mentor I've been looking for. It just hit me. I'm like, oh, I have it in me. Like what I'm looking for in another person, I already am. So that was the beginning. That was the first business. The event was called Reborn Experience, and I grew that to about 200 people. It was really fun. And then I started a speaker school on the side because people wanted to know how I was doing that on stage. And so that was the first like 800 grand in sales I made for like 20 to 23. It was
Wow.
good. My best year was like $500,000 in sales. I didn't have much profit because I didn't know how to do P&Ls, but I just
Mm-hmm.
I was good at selling the events.
Mm-hmm.
And then I reinvested into a lot of programs. But I did. I
Were you
sold like 6 figures from stage. It was really cool.
were you talking about similar stuff that like were you essentially doing then what you're doing now, but just in like a less form of it?
10% of what I talk about today is those things that I learned over the years because they have a relevance. Like
Mm-hmm.
understanding your mind, understanding belief systems, understanding your identity or attachment. But 90% of what I do now is very from a yogic approach. It's
Mm-hmm.
very spiritual in the sense that we're coming from a realization standpoint, not a I'm going to tell you who you need to be or how to become who you want. I'm trying to actually challenge all of that in people. Like, stop being imprisoned by being someone. Like
What?
your true nature, if you stop trying to be someone, will actually
Mm-hmm.
be far better of an experience of your life unfolding in surrender
Mm-hmm.
than trying to force something into will.
Why do you think it's so important for people to have a coach when, like, this is a question I ask myself, just even being in fitness too, where everyone knows what to do as as a whole kind of, and even with a lot of people, like with that girl with her unlock and stuff, I think if she like really sat down and thought about it, do you think that she can come to that revelation on her own? Or do you think that it's that you're asking her questions that open up her view to actually understand what's happening?
This is a good question. Everyone can on their own reach their own liberation. It just might be the hardest thing to do because it
Mm-hmm.
requires all your will and determination to sit still in meditation and observe your mind. And all
Mm-hmm.
things will become clear to you. And that power
Mm-hmm.
will re-arise. You'll obliterate ignorance and unconsciousness by just meditating, by
Mm-hmm.
just self-realization practices.
Mm-hmm.
Will people do that? Mostly no.
Yeah.
And so the alternative to that is mirrors. And that's why I
Mm-hmm.
think God put us together on one earth, because we're each other's mirrors. In a
Mm-hmm.
way, you're a mirror to me. You're my mirror and showing me parts of me that I'm maybe not seeing, or I have seen, or I'm relating to. And I'm a mirror to you, showing you things within you, because we're not experiencing each other. We're experiencing ourselves. And so your reaction to me is a reflection of you.
Mm-hmm.
And my awareness, my reaction to you is an awareness of me. And so we're all, in a sense, using each other as reflecting our awareness back on ourselves by how we see the other person. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we have a coach, it's a greatest mirror, because they're not only going to see things you don't, because you're unconsciously doing things. That's the whole point. Unconscious has to come to conscious. If that was so easy, and it is a meditation, but if it was so easy in your day-to-day life, you would just do it. But it's not that simple. You need a lot of awareness and a lot of attentiveness to your own behaviors and presence to catch it. But other people can catch it quickly, because as mirrors, it makes it a lot easier to see differences in us, and I'll see the thing in you that you're not seeing, right? And the second thing is that when you are being witnessed by someone, this is a more spiritual kind of philosophy. It's more spiritual concept. When you're being witnessed by someone, you change.
Mm-hmm.
When you're alone, and if you're not in meditative like concentration or awareness, presence, you're living unconsciously. Most of what you do is unconscious. Your will is not free. It's tied to your past.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're being watched, you're far more present, because the energy is like, how are they seeing me? So all your energy goes outward from like living and projecting your past onto the world to like inward to yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
being witnessed on its own is a very powerful process. And you change behavior, but what comes out is usually a lot of your insecurities and some scars, and it's easy to catch for a coach if they're good. A bad
Mm-hmm.
coach projects their world onto you instead of trying to observe yours to help you see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a lot of that back in the past with business. I like forced people to see it my way, and I'm like, I should have been seeing their way.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm 100% a clear channel. Like when I sit with
Yeah.
someone, I do not project any of what I think about them. Even sometimes my mind disagrees with my intuition, because my mind will be like, this guy has this issue. And I'm like, it doesn't feel like that though. It might seem
Mm-hmm.
like that, but it doesn't. So I would keep holding clear space until they have the real thing come out. And so I think projecting on each other makes you a bad coach. But one last thing on this is, when I work with private clients, my request in the beginning of it is to not look at me as a coach or a mentor or as a teacher, because the
Mm-hmm.
moment you put a label on me, you change your behavior to get mind approval, and it's like, this is not what we're here for. I have to be just your mirror. And so there's a limitation to I'm their coach. So I don't see myself as a coach. Do I do coaching? Yes, that's an action. Like I do that. I do coaching. I help them ask them questions, help them see things. Do I do mentorship? Yes. Sometimes I help them think a bit different from the experiences I've had. I'll propose ways of thinking. Do I teach? Yes. Sometimes I teach them a lesson. But I'm not a teacher, a mentor, or a coach. I just do coaching, mentorship, and teaching. The difference is on the call, I have no agenda of my own other than the process they need to go through to watch themselves and bring to the call. And as a mirror, I hold up a mirror for them to see themselves as they're going through whatever's coming up out of them. This is the purest form of a good relationship where people get breakthroughs. So at least for the work I do.
One of the reasons I asked is because like I've had a coach too, and I was having problems with my setters, and the coach was like, "Yeah, it's because you don't give a shit about them," and I was like, "Well, that's not true.
That's projection.
Like, I definitely care." Yeah. Well, to be fair, he actually made a good point because he's like, "Tell me something about them, anything," and I was like, "Well, they live in the Philippines," and he's like, "Yeah." Like you don't know where they want to go, what they want to do, their aspirations, like what they like, all this, and I actually end up like setting up a Zoom call with them and asked them all these questions, and like ever since then it was really it unlocked a lot because now I'm actually close with them and I'm actually like, hey, where do you want to go, what do you want to do, what do you want to happen? And then if you really zoom out, the takeaway was like, be nice to people you work with, essentially, right? And it's like that's why I'm asking if like everyone should fucking know that, but then my coach tells me that, and then all of a sudden it's this crazy revelation.
Well, it was a habit I had to consciously change. Telling someone what is true because I don't know, just that's projecting. And it sometimes works, so it seems like it works. And that doesn't mean it's truth. And truth is the objective of the work I do. I'm not interested in changing your mind. I'm interested in you freeing yourself from your mind so you can see truth clearly. Because your mind is the one making all distorted and blurry, and because your past is in the way. So turning all of those statements into questions is far better of an approach as a coach. So instead of, well, it's because you don't care, it's like, well, do you care about them? Because then it invites you into contemplating yourself. To be like, well, what do you mean? Well, do you know anything about them? Let's see, it's a very different approach, same outcome though. You might go like, well, actually I don't. You know what? I'm realizing, maybe I don't care. That realization being yours is a very important thing versus the guy going, you don't fucking care, because whose opinion was it that changed you? His. Which means who do you still need? Him.
Yeah, that's big difference. Even me and my coaching and stuff, you got to be careful when you lead people, right? For an example, where I'm like, hey, do you want X or X? Immediately just make it binary, where there's only two options. And like most people are going to be led pretty easy. So they're not going to be like, actually, it's neither one of those. I actually want X. So it's one of those things too, where it, like exactly what you just said, it is important for them to come to that revelation on their own, because that feels like the unlock, instead of someone just saying, hey, you need to do X, opposed to all of a sudden you ask them a bunch of questions where they're like, holy shit, I need to do X.
Right. Which is longer. And I get it takes more patience and it's a little more annoying, especially if you're outcome oriented. But bro, that's truth. That's a process of truth. I would never tell my kids, for example, or my wife, like, this is how you're supposed to be. Because how the fuck do I know? Have I lived the whole life? And no, I don't. So humility and compassion comes in and goes, well, what do you feel is how you're supposed to be? And if they give me an answer, just gentle question, like, how do you know? How do you know?
I always have this question about Tony Robbins, and like, I respect the business and everything he does, and he absolutely, he's a beast with it. But I think at the end of the day, it's like the most important thing to him. And it's, it seems like he actually wants to change the world. But at a certain point, I'm like, if that's really what you want, and that's really your calling, why do you charge for this? Like, why does Tony Robbins charge for it? If he he's at the point where like, he's probably fucking like worth like $500 million. And like, I know some of those tickets could be up to like 30K. So like, why have the price tag on it if that's truly what he believes in?
Well, a few things. One is he is changing the world. It's not he wants to, he is. I would then question, is changing the world the goal, or is freeing the world the goal? And that's a difference, because he's making people learn how to take control of their life. But I've met many people who are deep students of Tony, and they're still fucking miserable, bro. Like all they did is change their environment to what they wanted, but they have no connection relationship to what they even think they want. So they don't know who they are. So I think he's doing great work. I think it's important, from going from victim consciousness to creator consciousness, important, because you can't be a victim of your life. You got to learn how your mind works. But he's not like everyone I've met that does Tony Robbins. They're still very messed up. Like they are no different than the average person I work with. even if they spend 100 grand with Tony. And that's a sad thing, because all they changed was the kind of suffering they're having, not being free from it, honestly.
But I guess
that's my experience.
If he believes in it so much, like, why does he charge?
I'm going to get to that.
Oh,
well,
sorry.
There's an implied belief behind what you're saying, and I would catch it if I were you. There's a negative connotation on money, which is where the question is being birthed from. Because money has to be not a good thing for you to even ask, why would he charge? Because if you had a belief of there's nothing wrong with money, you wouldn't be wondering, questioning, why are you charging? Because what's wrong with charging would be the question in response to that. What's wrong with people paying for the service?
No, I think it's amazing. I think it's great. And I think, to be fair, I think my answer to it is, I think that there needs to be a level of buy-in. If you don't have a buy-in to something, then you're not going to put in the work. That's mine. But as a whole, maybe I'm like, because you're kind of in the same space, so maybe I was curious to get your output.
Well, I have a lot of free offerings, and I did that for years, by the way, before I made a dime from it. Or at least a year. Sorry, I don't want to exaggerate that, but a while. It was a good while. Like where I needed money, but I wasn't charging for it, and I was just giving all my time. I was a full-time job at. And then I charge a pretty decent amount for people that can afford it, and peace is their number one priority. Like, they want to know, who am I? I want to stop being reactive to life. And so I don't to them, it's very affordable. Maybe it's expensive though, but it's not something crazy. If I give it to someone who can't afford it, it would feel like an attack on them. It's like, no, relax. I don't need your money. I'm just saying this is the cost. But I will also say, I have literally taken on clients without them without them paying, and giving them the pay program, because I do it because it's who I am, not because of my business. And that's the difference. And so that's a whole nother conversation. But however, I would say the question, why do people charge? So Sadhguru, I heard him answer this question once. Someone asked, you're literally a guru. Tony's like, I'm not your guru. This guy's like, I'm a guru. Sadhguru's like, I am a mystic. I'm here to show you liberation. And someone asked, why do you charge? It costs $2,000-3,000 for his initiation for inner engineering. He goes, and I loved his answer, and I understand his mindset about it, but also he's playing the game of the world the way the world set the rules. If money wasn't existing, we wouldn't ask them to give us their cows to do this. We would just do it. But people have so much faith in money that money becomes an extension of what they think is important, their values, and what they make as choices. So where you put your money shows a lot about you. And so we've made it that way, though. I don't think that's the nature of us as humans. So Sadhguru said he only charges for the first level. After that, it's absolutely free to upgrade every level. And I'm like, oh. So he's like, my model's set up in a way where we try to make it all free, which is very religious. It's very prophetic. I'm just here to change the world for you. I don't need your stuff. Jesus came and people donated, but he didn't really ask. People donate because they wanted to support his journey, because you need money and resources to do this. But he never asked. He never needed for the money, contrary to how churches are today. But Sadhguru said, we realized that people would come in and they would just not take anything seriously. There was nothing holding them accountable. So they would come in and kind of drop halfway through the curriculum. So he goes, but when people pay, we saw a massive increase in accountability, in focus, in commitment to the program. He goes, so I just have you do that the first round, the first level, so and you get the experience of what you need. And then everything after that is on your own journey. We don't need your money, because he has hundreds of millions in his foundation. He doesn't need to have a business. So I like that answer. For me, I kind of modeled it a bit, where it's a lot to start with me, but every renewal, the price just keeps dropping a lot. So it's very easy to continue. And I've gone 3 rounds, so 18 months with the person, or sorry, a whole year and a half with the person. And so I eventually want to get to that point too, where there's so much cash in the treasury for the business. I just charge up front, and everything else is this is really about the work we're doing. It's not about the profit I can make. I don't care. I just need enough to take care of my stuff and to make sure we can take care of the business stuff, which is absolutely okay. We're a business, we're a capitalistic society. We need money and resources to pay for things. That's all.
No, I also want to be super clear. I'm not hating on it at all. I think fucking everyone should charge for everything. It's just sometimes when I thought about him, I'm he's at the level of why. But even when I kind of answer it myself, it's you need the buy-in.
You do. It's for people, not for him. You could question why he needs so much. Sure. But again, going back to he's changing the world, not freeing it in a sense. He wanted to teach people how to live life on their own terms. Maybe his term is to be fucking ultra wealthy. He has every right to have that desire. There's no wrong desire, with exception. But it's okay for him to want to be wealthy. But that just reflects where he's at, which is he's still living life on his terms, which is okay.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have ego now when you help someone? Like if you have someone have like a big unlock, you're like, fuck yeah.
I have an ego, bro. Everyone has an ego. I think self-realization is the process of just witnessing your ego and realizing you're not it. Whereas people who aren't doing this work, they don't realize the difference between them and their ego. They think they are their ego. And so you're subject to all of your past and your reactions. But like a yogi just knows I have ego here. And so ego is any form of identification or attachment. Do I feel, to answer your question, do you want me to answer or do you want to ask the next one right now?
I kind of want to ask this next one, but like, do you know what the curse of knowledge is?
No, what's that?
So the curse of knowledge is essentially the way that I believe that other people think the same way as me. So if I'm over at your house and I have like gum and I like take it out and I just like throw it on the floor, you're like, what the fuck are you doing? And then in my house, maybe like I grew up where it's okay to throw the gum on the floor. So that's kind of like an interesting thing too, because I have a friend too, and like he'll always talk about people, and he's like, specifically, he's just like heavy into entrepreneurial, like he's a big entrepreneur, and he's like, people that don't do this are losers. And I'm like, that's not true. And then like we'll kind of argue on that, but it's his belief, and that's like what he believes. So it's hard for him to see something else because that's his truth. Yeah, which is kind of an interesting concept too, right? So it's like what you know or what you believe, you also put on other people. Right. So like if somebody does something outside of what you think is normal, it's like fucked up.
So why is it called the curse of knowledge?
Because the way that you think, you're kind of reflecting that on every single other person. I mean, even with yourself a little bit, I think that that's like a bit of a thing where it's like you found this enlightenment and you kind of want, maybe not want, but you kind of want to show people the enlightenment, right? It's like even when I traveled, I seen how important it was and all this kind of stuff. So all of a sudden I want other people to travel because I'm like, you're missing this aspect of life. And
yeah, I mean, well, to be fair, I would have to agree with you because at this point, what you're saying is totally accurate. If I'm finding a sense of wisdom, enlightenment in my life and a peace, of course, I'd want to share it. Is that an egoic thing? No. I don't think all sharing is coming from ego. Ego is not a thing. It's not an action. It's a place you act from. It's important to discern this because something could be egoic or based in truth. But if you think actions are categorized as egoic, like making money is an ego, that's not true. But if you do it, it's an easy cop out and you start to have a very distorted perception of your mind. And you're going to live very uncomfortably because you'll start to feel afraid to do most things because you think it's egotistical. It's not, bro. I had this issue in probably day 200 to 300 of my journey where I was like, I'm afraid to do anything. Like I'm not afraid, but I'm resisting doing anything because I'm worried it's going to be out of ego. And it took hundreds of days of self-reflection and self-study to realize ego is always a part of everything you do because you have to identify with something to be doing it. Action comes from who you are. And so there has to be an identity. And there's but attachment is a choice. Like you can not be attached, but still have an identity to something. But even the identity you're attached. So it's a tricky thing. But living or acting from truth versus from ego is the difference of where you're doing something from. I'll give you an example. If I make love to my wife with the intent to make life, that I'm coming from a place of truth. To please my wife. It's my wife. It's out of love. It's coming from a place of love to make love. That action is sex. But the same action of sex could be with a one-night stand or someone I just met to just get an orgasm, to feel good as a man because I got this hot girl. Well, the place I'm coming from is ego, which is a place of lack, scarcity, attachment, inferiority, all this in completion place. So it's like sex is a sacred act that creates life in one scenario. And in the other scenario, it's just a wasteful use of energy. And so I think in business, it's important to start discerning how much of it is coming from ego or coming from truth. And so that's why the process is important because first you got to identify